What's this sun you speak of?
Here's the thing, Chad. Here in Texas, we have been miserable. I admit that we're spoiled. We haven't seen any sun in, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 days. And you walk outside today, right now, people that are working from home, everybody's outside walking. It is lovely, lovely day today.
So I took my staff, we hopped in it, we rented a van, and we went to Lawrence for Big Monday last week, Cincinnati and Kansas. And we brought the weather back with us. When we drove home, it was fog and rain for 11 hours, and we have not seen the sun since. So I haven't seen the sun in 12 days.
I understand.
It's depressing, man.
It is. Well, usually, it's basketball season, and we would start off talking basketball. But you know what? Football schedules came out today. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Chad, tell us a little bit as far as the UC schedule, what you see, the any pitfalls or anything like that. Let's kind of start there. Just by looking at the schedule, what do you see pitfalls or any avenues for your Cincinnati football this year?
I mean, you have to feel pretty good about the opening portion of the schedule if you're Cincinnati. Starting with Big 12 play, Houston at home, at Texas Tech, bye week, at Central Florida, Arizona State at home, at Colorado. Those are all, I think, teams that are probably going to be picked near the bottom of the league. I mean, maybe Central Florida will be a little bit more towards the middle with KJ Jefferson or whatever. But I think that's about as favorable as you can get for a start to your conference schedule. The last four will be difficult. You've got West Virginia at home, at Iowa State, at Kansas State, and then you end the season home with TCU. So that 4-game stretch is going to be difficult. But in those first 5 games for a Scott Satterfield program that needs to get on track in year 2, the schedule's not working against you, I guess is the right way to put it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of the way I looked at it too. The season, I guess, Scott Satterfield's tenure there didn't get off the way that I think a lot of people thought that it was going to get off at UC. I think, coming off of Luke Fickell, obviously all the success that he had. What were some of the things that maybe surprised you that didn't happen this past season with the football, just from the outside looking in? Obviously, with transfer and roster turnover, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's just a lot.
Yeah. I think the most surprising thing would be that the defense didn't quite hold up the way that they hoped. So a lot of that came down to they just haven't you had a generational secondary the year that they went to the playoff.
Correct.
Ahmad Gardner, who is on his way to becoming an NFL superstar. Yes. Kobe Bryant, who won the Thorpe Award.
Yes.
When he was the second best cornerback on his team. and then you had Brien Cook, who's a starter for Kansas City in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
You were just so unbelievably good in the secondary, and they haven't done between Luke Fickell's last year and Scott Satterfield's first year. They hadn't done an overall good job of replacing or reimagining that talent pool.
Sure.
And that really hurt them. And then they didn't have much of a pass rush at all. They were very good in the trenches, but they didn't have anything on the edge. They couldn't get after the quarterback. So quarterbacks are standing back there with a bunch of time throwing against a bad secondary. That's not a great recipe, Coach. That's not how you want your defense to set up. Well, what do you do? Well, we can't get after the quarterback and we can't cover anybody.
Yeah, no.
This might not be the league for you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a problem. That can absolutely be a problem. But I feel like, Satterfield, looking at him from Louisville, he built some stuff going on in Louisville. Look, he took over a mess there. Cincinnati is not anywhere close to what Louisville was when Satterfield took over, because UC was doing just fine. They were doing just fine. Louisville was a nightmare when he took over that job, and he built it up into something pretty quickly. So I feel like he's the coach that can come in. I mean, he's going to do things his way. It might be a big change as far as philosophy, but I feel like he's a guy that can come in and they're going to change and get things rolling pretty quickly if he's given the opportunity, especially with the transfer portal.
I agree. And I think they've done good work in the transfer portal. My biggest thing this offseason was the key for Cincinnati is going to be taking bottom of the roster guys that went in the transfer portal and replacing them with top to middle of the roster guys, because depth was kind of their major issue last year. And they look to have solved, or at least put answers in place for a lot of those problems that kind of plagued them last year. I think ultimately they had some top of the roster talent that could compete in the league. And if you look at a lot of the final scores, they were in a good number of those games.
Absolutely.
They just didn't have that depth. They didn't have the quarterback play. And that's kind of the other thing that, we'll see. They made a very quick decision out of the transfer portal at quarterback. If he's the right guy, then this thing's gonna be able to turn around fairly quickly. Emory Jones just didn't have that extra gear.
Correct.
He wasn't bad. He didn't necessarily kill you, but he never put the team on his back and said, "All right, boys, let's ride." Like that just wasn't the guy that he ended up being. If Brendan Sorsby, the transfer from Indiana, is what this recruiting department and this coaching staff thinks he is, I think things are gonna operate a lot more smoothly this year.
Gotcha. But Steven Leonard, how's it going, my man? Appreciate you joining us.
Good. I just finished watching some baseball practice, so that's why I was running a little bit late today.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So, just checking in, football schedule came out today. Did you have a chance? First of all, did you have a chance to look at it?
I did. I saw the Office video that UCF put out.
Yeah, one of the better ones that I've seen. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I think they
don't give UCF credit for anything in Cincinnati.
Well, the only F you guys got is on your report cards. So.
Ooh. But yeah, I'm looking at the schedule, and I think it looks. I mean, favorable.
Yeah.
Just from the outside looking in, it looks like a favorable schedule that they could finish in the top half of the Big 12 this coming up season.
Yeah, I mean, it played out, I think, the way UCF wanted it. You get the bye early in the season to recalibrate some things after TCU if you need to. And obviously all of the Western teams besides Arizona State at home is a big plus for UCF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I look at the schedule. I mean, Sam Houston at TCU, Colorado, at Florida, which at Florida is a winnable game. I mean, it just is.
Yeah. KJ has precedence winning this one.
Yeah. So I like how that schedule turns out. As far as I know, this is kind of the dead period. I know signing day is coming up, or the second signing day is coming up. Any news on the front? Any bringing in any extra guys in the second signing period, or any news on the UC football front?
I mean, on the 2024s, they've been done for a while on that.
That's what I figured.
They finished up their transfer class last week or the week before. Mm-hmm. So now they're focused on 2025s. They had Friday Night Lights, which is their version of Junior Day. Mm-hmm. Last week, they'll have some more kids on campus for the Oklahoma basketball game on Saturday. But they've much moved on to 2025. I think they're comfortable where their roster is for this up year.
Got it. So, Chad, moving forward, just taking a look at the Big 12 with the schedules, coming out today, taking a look at the conference overall. I know the landscape and everybody screams at the SEC. I know there's a lot of beating of their chest when it comes to that and the Big 10. I don't see that the Big 12 is taking a huge backseat when you go from top to bottom especially with the additions. I don't know that the Big 12 is going to take a huge step back. I know the Big 10 is going to be loaded when you add in the teams that they added in. But where do you see overall as the conference where the Big 12 may stack up in the grand scheme of things?
They're going to be third. I don't know that that's really all that debatable. I mean, they just, say what you will, but losing Oklahoma and Texas, you lose two premier brands,
Yes,
two household names.
yes.
But I mean, when you go down the SEC and the Big Ten, once you get after those first 3-4 schools, there's a bunch of Nebraska, Missouri is coming on.
Had a year. That's right.
Yeah, but I mean, once you get past in the Big Ten, once you get past Ohio State, Michigan, USC, I mean, we'll see if they can get the defense fixed. And that's going to be something they have to do in that league. Oregon, and then you go to the SEC. Like, we don't know what Alabama is going to be.
No.
Who's the big dog? I mean, Georgia.
That's right.
Who's the big dog in the SEC? Like that rides shotgun with Georgia right now?
Nobody.
We don't know.
Right.
So, I mean, when you look at the Big 12, 1 through 10, 1 through 11, I think you feel pretty good are going to be solid quality programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have a couple there, Cincinnati trying to work their way out of that, but you'll have a couple there at the bottom, but that's no different than the SEC. That's no different than the Big Ten. So I think what they lack in maybe that top end 1 or 2 teams, they make up for by having a lot more quality as you get into 7, 8, 9, 10.
I also think even Colorado being one of the bottom teams probably in the Big 12, they still have Dion there. They still have brand name getting ratings wise.
They do.
Yeah, people will watch for sure.
Yeah, people are going to watch. How good they are, it remains to be seen. I expect they're going to be better this year than they were last year. If they fix their offense and defensive line at all, I would think they're going to that can equate to at least 2 more wins, I would guess. But we'll see. Like I said, there was a lot more style than substance there last year. But I think that's where the Big 12 is going to kind of live, Stephen, as far as what the conference is. I think they're going to live on, hey, we've got a bunch of good teams versus just trying to always say we've got the top team out there like a Georgia or an Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. I think where the Big 12 is going to thrive is to be able to go and say, just like Chad said, we have 10 teams that are good. We have 10 legitimate good football teams every single year where you guys are just top heavy, where you have 2, maybe 3 teams that are really good. And then the rest are just like, okay, and the SEC especially, I mean, because they always bump their chest out, but you're like, so Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Florida. I mean, what are we talking about here? Don't tell me that all those teams are these quality teams, because they're not. We watch football just like you do. So I think, Stephen, that's where the Big 12 is really going to be able to, especially the new Big 12, to land and kind of poke their chest out and say, we have a lot of quality teams.
Yeah, it's definitely turning out to be a bit of a gauntlet in terms of the level of teams are all fairly similar, I would say, between 1 through 10, but
yeah, and that's going to be the thing. It's just they're similar. There's going to be obviously some disparity. There's going to be some teams that are a little bit better than others, but I just think that's where the conference as a whole, Chad, is just going to have to kind of to lay its mark is, hey, we got the quality. You guys may have, or we have the quantity and quality. You guys have the top of the food chain, but we're just underneath you, and we got a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the long-term question is going to be, does anybody step up and become kind of the alpha? Or is it every year, these 3 teams were great this year, they dropped down a little bit. These 3 teams rise up the next year. Or is there one team over a 3-4 year stretch that is able to kind of sit at the head of the table for a little while.
Well, and let's stay with that, Chad. As somebody that's been covering college athletics for a while, what do you prefer as far as the conference? Or maybe not prefers, maybe not the word, but what do you think would be best for the conference? Do you think it should be somebody to take the lead, or do you think every, so often it changes?
I think in terms of perception, you need somebody we're going into this 12-team format.
Right.
And I think you need somebody that the people know every year. You have to watch out for this team, going into the playoff.
Right.
Because I think what'll happen, especially now, remember, the Big Ten is getting massive money. The SEC is getting massive money.
Yes.
What are Fox and ESPN going to do above all else?
Right.
They are going to promote the hell out of those leagues.
Absolutely.
And I think you need a counterpunch.
Yeah.
Whoever it may be. That's what I worry about right now is I don't see anybody that I feel like they're going to be that team that going into, even if it's as simple as going into the last week of the regular season, this team is always in contention for a Big 12 championship game.
Nope, you're 100% right. And Steven, like you mentioned, Colorado is the name. And I feel like the media and everyone tried to push and force Colorado on everybody before they were ready. But if there's anybody, as long as Deion is there, I think that's what the national media is going to try to force on everybody, is that Colorado is the name in the Big 12. But I don't believe that they're ready for that yet because they're not good enough to be that yet.
Yeah, I definitely think they're not at that level in terms of on the field. But as far as off the field, yeah, they're probably the one school that people are going to push is like, oh, that's the national contender coming out of the Big 12 because that's the school everyone knows. Like
Correct.
Even non-college football fans know.
Yes, and they know it because of the coach, and that's the whole thing. But sooner or later, like we mentioned, or like I mentioned before, the style over substance. I mean, we got to be able to get some substance in there. They got to win more football games. You can't be considered one of the big dogs if you can't win more than 5 or 6 games a season.
Yep.
So that would be that. I mean, that's just my take on it, is that we love them. We want them to succeed. But you know what? At the same time, it's like, look, it's sooner or later. And it's just like this past season. We got all of this hoopla over Colorado, but then it just died off. And why did it die off? Because people that actually watch football and paid attention, they're like, man, they're not good. They are not good at all. And, they beat these teams that, okay, they weren't very good, as it turned out to be, the TCUs and the Colorado States of the world. I mean, those teams weren't very good, and they're winning these games, and then they're getting beat, getting hammered by some of these schools. So I don't know that Colorado is that team. From a national standpoint, I don't know who's next, Chad. It's like, is Oklahoma State ready? Is Kansas State ready? It's just, I don't know who is ready to take that step, to be honest with you.
I mean, the most likely you would think is Oklahoma State. They've got a good system in place. Gundy has built a good culture. You saw them, have a little bit of a rough start and then charge to finish strong towards the end of the season. But outside of them, like, let's be honest. I watched the Sonny Dykes show at SMU for a while.
Right.
He wasn't good there.
No.
He wasn't good there.
No.
Every year they would come in highly rated, and Luke Fickell would take his lunch and give him a swirly. And then stuff him in a locker when he was done with it. Like, that's how that went. Like, I have a hard time believing all of a sudden, because he's at TCU, Sonny Dykes is just not the guy that he was at SMU. I don't see that.
Right.
So Kansas State, recruiting issues. Like, what is, where do they sustain it? What pipeline do they sustain it from?
Yep.
I don't have an easy, outside of Oklahoma State, I don't have an easy, like, this team checks the boxes, that I would love for it to be UCF, but You know what happens every year with UCF? We have to pick what's the one game that Gus is going to win that blows everybody's mind, and then what's the one game that Gus is going to lose and everybody goes, what the hell happened to UCF?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. With the one team that I know where I live, I'm here in Frisco, just north of Dallas, is a lot of people thought Baylor was going to take that next step. And Dave Aranda, well, all of a sudden, Baylor fans want him out. It's just like 1 year, and they just fell completely off a cliff. And they have the recruiting base. I mean, they are in a hot spot, and yet they were awful this year. They were awful.
I'm interested in Steven's thoughts on this.
UCF saved his job by blowing that lead.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in your thought on this, Steven. When I saw Oklahoma, when I saw Iowa State, when I saw Kansas, and one or two others, they came out on the field and looked physically different than Cincinnati. Just they looked like they were Big 12 legacy teams, and Cincinnati was a team moving up. When Baylor came out on the field at Nippert Stadium, I went,
Yeah,
I mean, they look about the same. They didn't look any different.
Baylor and West Virginia were the two teams that came here, and I would say they looked like UCF. Like UCF had maybe 10 guys on both sides of the field that looked exactly like the top 10 guys for both teams.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, the one thing, just from me noticing and watching it, is the offensive and defensive lines were just so much different. And you can tell, and that's where, both all the newer school, I guess I say moving up, but those guys have been able to compete, especially at the skill position. But that's where the difference comes in when you get down into the trenches. That's where the UCF, UC, they'll have to play a little bit of catch up. Houston is kind of the same way. Houston's going to have to play a lot of catch up, but I feel like Houston is, they got a long way to go, but I feel like they can get there quickly just because of where they're at. But we'll see what happens with Houston. So we're going to take a quick break here. We'll come right back. We'll take a word from our sponsors here, Synergy Financial Partners.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right. Welcome back here. So Chad's taking a quick break. He'll be back here in just a quick second. So, Steven, let's take a look here at basketball. Let's kind of flip the script here. So, just looking at the standings right now, UCF is currently in 10th place, but ahead of Texas. If you look at the standings and you're just watching, there's 12 teams right now with winning records in the Big 12. Clearly, head and shoulders the best conference in the country this year, without a doubt. I don't know. Clearly, they're not going to get 12 teams in the NCAA tournament. I have been on record to say that they can get 11. That might be a huge stretch. But looking at it from right now, if you talk about just those 12 teams, any of those 12 can actually make the tournament. UCF right now sitting at, 3-4 in the conference, 12-7 overall. Johnny Dawkins doing a pretty good job right now. I know there was a lot of rumblings early. Has he staved off some of that fire that was coming his way? And what about the future? What does the rest of the season look like for UCF right now?
I mean, he definitely has staved off the pressure because people thought he was going to win 0-1, maybe one game in conference. And the fact that UCF's been competitive in all but the Kansas State game is kind of a testament to his coaching. Obviously blew the lead against Cincinnati after dominating early, which has allowed a little bit of more rumbling on social media, but it seems like he's safe for the time being. And as far as the future holds, they host Baylor tomorrow. They host Oklahoma at the weekend. Those are going to be the big games. They're undefeated in the weekday games, so if they can beat Baylor, they'll move to 10-0 on weekdays.
Got it.
Obviously, got Kansas and Texas on the weekdays too.
Tough. But they beat
So, yeah.
Texas already.
Yeah,
So,
that's what.
and
So
they
I'm
beat
saying
Kansas.
they beat them on the weekdays already.
Got it.
So if they can beat Baylor tomorrow, they end up being 10-0 on weekday games, which is a little fun thing. But yeah, I mean,
Gotcha.
Big 12 basketball is definitely a lot different than AAC basketball. I think the fans are a lot more into it. The additional financial arena has been a lot more packed than it has ever been.
Got it. Well, Chad, one thing that I know about UC basketball, I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, so I'm very familiar with UC basketball. That the atmosphere aspect of it, UC is not. They weren't going to be intimidated coming into this conference as far as a basketball crowd or an environment. They didn't have to take a backseat to anybody.
Yeah, and I think if you haven't been to Fifth Third Arena since it's been renovated, it is a world-class basketball facility. And it's almost, if you had been to the old gym in the, from the Huggins days and most of Mick Cronin, and you saw it now, you would believe that it's a brand new facility. And
Gotcha.
they basically gutted it to the studs and started over, and it's world-class. And they have a very basketball savvy, very passionate basketball fan base. I mean,
yes,
the old timers know over the past 20 years, Cincinnati has really come on and made a name for themselves in football. But Cincinnati's a basketball school.
Yeah.
Make no mistake. Like,
absolutely.
The passion in this town
absolutely
is for Cincinnati basketball.
Absolutely.
So I know I can say this as somebody, I've been doing this for 17 years. So I started right when they went into the Big East.
Okay.
And you got those, whatever it was, 7 years or whatever, where it was Syracuse and Georgetown and Pitt and Villanova and that place had fire. It had energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a decade, I call it the decade in the wilderness, where, you know what a savvy basketball fan base doesn't give two craps about? East Carolina on Sunday at 2 p.m.
Exactly.
Or Tulsa on the road at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. Like they thumb their nose at it, rightfully so. You know how I can say rightfully so? Because I've now remembered what being a part of a great basketball league looks like.
Yes.
Over the past month. One of these things is not like the other. This fan base is out of their minds excited to be back in the big time.
Good for them.
And the atmosphere at Fifth Third Arena has been, I've contemplated no longer calling it Fifth Third Arena and going back to calling it the Shoemaker Center.
Yeah.
Which is what it was known as
previous,
in the beginning of its existence, because it's back like the old days in terms of the environment, the sellouts, the fans going crazy. That's part of what got UCF, I think, on Saturday, is once that place got rocking, they got pretty rattled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the old Shoemaker Center just because I used to go to Dave Kreider's basketball camp back in 92 and 93. So long time. Right, I remember that. Yep. It was pretty new back in those days. So
well, it looked old. It was brand new, but it looked like a high school, like a giant high school gym.
Correct. That is correct. So one thing that go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I was going to say the crowd definitely played a factor. They were making a lot of uncharacteristic fouls. I think Ibrahima Diallo fouled out in 5 minutes of game action. So
he averaged a foul a minute. It was impressive.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about, all the environments in the Big 12. They're it seems like places are stepping up. Like you said, Stephen, UCF, the crowd participation, wasn't always known as a place that was going to be rocking. And now it is. If you're playing big time basketball, I think that some of the newer schools, UC, here's the thing about UC, while yes, it's getting into the Big 12, I never considered UC to be kind of a step down. Maybe in football, I just never really considered UC to be a step down. I think it's because I followed Louisville for so long and they played Louisville for so long. They were neck and neck. I just never considered them to be a step down. It almost seemed like Cincinnati was just left out, and now they got brought in. And UCF said the difference is they were being brought up, but it looks like the fan participation and everything that you have seen is Stephen, is that they are stepping up to the plate because they want to be a part of this basketball thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only school that's went D3 to Power 5, so you see the rise as UCF goes up in competition. The fans get even more rowdy. This year especially has been complete growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So
UCF's
taking
a tough team. They're fun to watch.
Yeah,
they are.
I mean, they have a lot of length, which is what keeps them in a lot of games. They play terrific defense. I think they're top 10 in defensive efficiency, except in the second half against Cincinnati.
They didn't get to play any defense. Cincinnati beat them down the floor.
Yeah,
they just never got set in the second half, really, to put the clamps on Cincinnati. Because that's the way you're going to have to beat that UCF defense, is you're going to have to score before they get set. Because once they get set, they are a load.
Yeah,
Correct.
I mean, missing Shamari Allen's been big too. He's out with an ankle sprain right now. So whenever he comes back, I think the defense really goes through him, and the team slows down when he's on the floor.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like Cincinnati, I should say. It looks like they're trying to make this tournament. I don't know if a lot of people at the beginning of the season would have said that Cincinnati is one of the teams that's going to make the tournament, but it looks like they are putting on the full court press. They are in it to win it. We were just talking just a minute ago. What are they, 8th technically in the conference right now, sitting at 3-4, 14-6. I haven't looked at the schedule moving forward, Chad, but what does it look like the rest of the season? Obviously, the Big 12 is just a bear. I mean, it really doesn't matter who you play. I mean, you got to bring it every single night.
So things get pretty interesting next week.
Okay.
They have West Virginia tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a 3-game stretch that are essentially the top 3, what I think are the top 3 teams in the league. Texas Tech, who is in first.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Texas Tech, Houston at home, then Iowa State at home. According to the standings, those are the 3 best teams in the league.
Yeah, they are.
And so they opened the season with a stretch of 6 games straight against ranked teams.
Right.
And then they got UCF and West Virginia. And now they play. You think that, okay, we went through the hard part. No. Here's the 3 best teams in the league. And then they get UCF again. And then Oklahoma State before finishing TCU, Houston, Kansas State, Oklahoma, West Virginia.
Unbelievable. It's just the conference. It's tough.
Well, did you see, has anybody looked at Kansas month of February?
No, I have not.
No.
Their schedule brutal?
I was actually in the men's room getting ready to leave Allen Fieldhouse, and just happened to notice what their schedule looks like starting February 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
They host Houston. They go to Kansas State. They host Baylor. They go to Texas Tech. They go to Oklahoma. They host Texas. They host BYU. They go to Baylor. They host Kansas State. They end the season at Houston.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Woo.
They got the Texas.
There's not half a night off there.
Yeah, there's no night off. Not that there's a night off anywhere in the conference, but man, I mean, there's a potential for Kansas to lose 4 more games in that stretch. Easily lose
3-4 in a row.
That's right. I mean, Jiminy Christmas. I mean, that is brutal. And this is not a Kansas team that, a normal Kansas team that we're used to seeing. I mean, they're very good. Don't get me wrong. But they don't have like a superstar on their team. They don't have that NBA guy that you say, okay, this guy's getting drafted. They don't have that this year.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to label Hunter Dickinson as that, but then UCF's entire game plan was just go right at Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah. If Hunter Dickinson was really a pro, he'd already be in the pros.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's not. So I get that part.
I took a lot of heat on this before the season. I think he's a very talented player. I don't think he's a winner.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a plus defender, which I mean he gets a lot of blocks.
Absolutely not.
But he's very slow and couldn't really do anything defensively.
Right.
If
Now
he was
there's
a
one
winner,
thing. Yeah, if he was a winner, go ahead.
Michigan
Go
would
ahead.
have been better. Michigan would have
Exactly.
made 2 tournaments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is
Kevin McCullough is a
1,000%.
star. At the college level, Kevin McCullough is a star.
Yes.
I don't know that he's an NBA guy per se.
That's right. That's right.
But there's been this doubt of Hunter Dickinson from the start for me that he's a compiler.
Mm-hmm.
He will get you 23 and 10, but how many game-winning plays does he make?
Correct.
Yeah,
that is correct.
I think he ended up finishing the UCF game with like 15 points, but they were all just worthless baskets after the game was over.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on the rest of the way with Kansas. Like I said, that schedule, that stretch is just brutal. I mean, I'm looking at the standings here. I mean, and that's why the Big 12 is so good. I mean, you look at Oklahoma, and what are they, 9th in the conference? No, let's see, 10th in the conference. They're number 23 in the country, which is absolutely insane when you just sit here and think about it. They're number 23. Now, maybe they should or shouldn't be number 23, but they've played themselves into that ranking, and they're sitting there at 10th in the conference. It's just it never gets easy. The one game that you might think might be easy, maybe Oklahoma State, maybe West Virginia. Well, Kansas State, it took them overtime to beat Oklahoma State 2 weeks ago. So at home. So
Oklahoma State's young.
Yes,
they've got some electric to them.
They do. They absolutely
can hit these spurts where for 8, 10, 12 minutes, they're out of their mind.
Yes.
They're not consistent yet, but they're talented. And look at West Virginia's roster.
Yeah.
West Virginia is one of the more talented teams. They just haven't been able to put a game together.
Well, when you get your coach taken away from you, before the season starts, and maybe this is the guy that they wanted, maybe it's not. I'm guessing it's probably not. But at the same time, it just makes it all tough. Plus, at the beginning of the year, they didn't have a guy that a transfer that somehow the NCAA didn't think should be eligible, but now he is eligible. It's just we could go. That's a different conversation for another time if we want to talk about the NCAA. But I believe this conference is so good, and I'm going to put both of you on the spot. How many teams do you, Steven, think that the Big 12 gets into the tournament?
I think being conservative, probably 9, just because I don't see I have a hard time believing that a double-digit number gets into the tournament. That's just a gut feeling, not because there isn't enough teams that are worthy. I think Cincinnati is probably a team that's worthy. Oklahoma's like 10th in the conference, you said right now. I think they're definitely worthy. But I don't I think UCF sitting on the outside. I think teams like that might get left out.
I'm going to go 10.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking, Ed. I think 10.
Let's go Texas Tech, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, TCU, Kansas State, Baylor, BYU, Oklahoma, Cincinnati is 10.
Yeah. I think Oklahoma State, West Virginia, UCF, and then I don't know.
That's leaving Texas out.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's leaving them out of it. But I'm looking at Texas. I'm looking at where they're headed. I'm watching. I know they won some good games last week, but I think that was more they were rallied for their coach because their coach said something stupid. I think that was more rallying for that. But I see Texas. Yeah, there you go. I see Texas losing probably another 6 or 7 games, and they'll play themselves out of this.
But they are as talented at the top
than
anybody in the league.
Absolutely. So and that's what's weird.
They took Houston to the wire last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
They sure did. And had opportunities to win. And they kind of gave it away.
I would say this. If it comes down to coin flip, does Cincinnati or Texas make it? I think one of the two does. I think one of the two does enough, and that gives you 10. Because if you look at the other 9, I don't think there's anybody in there that misses. Who misses from the other 9?
I don't know. I
BYU
don't know.
metrically is like top
They love them.
7, 8 in the metrics.
Yes.
Kansas State. I mean, Kansas State would be one. Their metrics are bad. They're in like the 70s.
They got to win some more games.
They do.
They got some games. Kansas State has some games coming up here against some really good competition. They got to win some of those basketball games. And if they do, I think they'll be fine. They're one of those teams that you're right, Chad. They're kind of on the outs. They're not on the outside looking in, but when you just think about it, okay, if there's a question, they would be the team that gets left out. But they have an opportunity to shut that door because they play some really good basketball teams coming up. They win those games. And again, you don't have to win all of them. You know, Jerome Tang's on record saying if you get the 9 wins in this conference this year, you're in. And he's 100% right. You get the 9 wins, there's not even a question on whether you make the tournament this year. So if you did anything in the non-conference, which the majority of the conference did. So I just think that if Kansas State gets there, I said 11. I know that was shooting for the stars because I just want to pump the conference up that much because I think they're really, really good. But that's going to require a Texas to get their act together. And maybe they do. It's like you mentioned, Chad. They're the most if you just look at talent for talent, Texas has the most talent for talent. Now, what they do with it and how it's coached is a different conversation. And I go and how they fit together, but I don't know. I'm shooting for the stars saying 11. I know that's wishful thinking. I'm thinking 10, 9 to 10 is all. 9, I think, is a lock. Yeah. But I think 10 for sure, I think, is very, very reasonable.
You want some hot takery?
Yes, sir.
I'll fire some hot takery.
Let's do it.
The 2011 Big East got 11 teams in the NCAA tournament. This league is better.
Is
you want to know why this league is better?
Yes. Tell me why.
1-17 DePaul, 3-15 South Florida, 4-14 Providence, 5-13 Rutgers. This league doesn't have the level of bottom feeder that the 2011 Big East had. Now, that 2011 Big East had Pitt, Notre Dame, Louisville, Syracuse, St. John's, West Virginia, Cincinnati, and Georgetown that were all outstanding. But I think this league, top to bottom, is better than the 2011 Big East. That league got 11 in. I'm going to say at least 10. At least 10. And there's a case for 11. Cincinnati, Kansas State, Texas. If they all get in, it's 11.
I like that. I like that hot take. And I remember that Big East. The Big East was so loaded. It had great coaches, great players, but you were 100% right, Chad. It didn't have the bottom feeders, or this league doesn't have the bottom feeders that they did because those were guaranteed wins. Well, we just saw Kansas thinking they're having guaranteed wins against UCF and West Virginia, and they lost both of them. So it's just not, they just doesn't have that. That's why I think the league is so good, Stephen, is that there's just no night off, nothing that you can do that you have to bring your A game, and if you don't, you get beat. And that's why I love the league.
Here's the one thing I will give to the 2011 Big East. Connecticut finished 9th and won the national championship. Now, that Kemba Walker guy,
he's pretty good.
He's all right. He's pretty good. But that's how good that league was, is UConn finished 9th and won the national title.
Yeah. So, well, all right, guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time. To be honest, we will bring both of you guys back as many times as you want to come, man. So we appreciate you guys taking the time today.
Appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Absolutely. We'll take one quick break before the end of the show. Otherwise, we'll be right back from our partners from Synergy Financial Partners.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
Well, Fitz, another good conversation,
Yeah.
another good show today. Both guys kind of giving us the lowdown. I love the football talk. I love talking football, college football in January. I can't get enough of college football.
I thought Chad's comments about Cincinnati still being a basketball school reminded me a lot of how K-Staters looked at the football success under Bill Snyder up until your group arrived. It was great. Yeah, it was awesome. But even though basketball had struggled for 20 years or so, they still believed they were a basketball school. And then 97 and 98 happened. It's like I think that was the shift over to being a football school and totally embracing the culture that goes with college football, the tailgating, the entire event. It's not just a game, it's an entire event. And understanding that, what's cool about football is it's a book with 12 chapters, and every chapter is its own thing. And maybe you get an epilogue with a bowl or a championship game. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. And unfortunately, right when Cincinnati was getting established in the football realm, they've taken that step backwards. But it's great to have that program. If that program fully gets back on its feet in terms of basketball, it's another monster in this conference.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about UC. I mean, I know I've said it several times. I'm very familiar with the program just because, I grew up 80 miles from there. And so, and especially the rivalry that they had, you saw it. But as terms of where it is and where they can be successful, first of all, I don't think it will be long before football gets back on its feet. Look, half the people that live in Cincinnati are Ohio State fans. That's just the way that it is. It's an Ohio State state. However, they play really good football, high school football in the state of Ohio. Everybody can't go to Ohio State, and Cincinnati will get their fill. And first of all, they play really good football in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
That's number one. So they're going to get, as long as they continue to dive into that database to get kids, they're going to be fine. They'll get it turned around. First year transfer portal, it happens. It happened late. The guy, Satterfield took the job late. It is what it is. Things change. Things change. They'll get it figured out. I don't know how great they'll be this year, but as Chad mentioned, Fitz, the schedule that they got, it's fitting to get back on your feet in this conference.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's so odd to look at a schedule without those two certain schools on it, to have neither one on it, particularly Oklahoma, because that just goes back so long for Kansas State.
Right.
And it makes you realize that how much you kind of focused on those games unconsciously because of that was the big game if you want to go hunting for that. And now that they're gone, you look at the conference and it just seems such a wild frontier. It's unknown what's going to happen in this league. There's so many variables. I'm not a big fan of Kansas State's schedule. I'll get into that with a video for tomorrow, but it's not that it's hard. I just don't like the way the dates line up and how you play. There's a period where they play 4 out of 6 on the road in conference play, and it's just awful.
That's tough.
But every game's winnable in its own way, and every game is certainly losable in its own way. It's just going to make this absolutely wild. I see why everyone, after the schedule comes out, Utah's got a really good path to go somewhere. And if it's Kansas State that meets them, I don't know, but K-State's going to be tested. K-State's tested the non-conference schedule. Big B, as you know, they go to Tulane, which luckily Willie Fritz is gone, but now he's at Houston. So it doesn't really help you. And then you got Arizona, which I still believe Arizona's going to be a pretty good team. So, and then you go into the conference schedule because Arizona's a non-con game. It's going to be fun. I booked hotels today, and like I said, K-State is strangely on a mountain tour. They play at Boulder, they play at Morgantown, and they play in Provo. It's going to be beautiful road games. People are fired up for these road games. This is a nice step for the conference, which is now down to 5 months before it's live and official. So this is kind of a cool day.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm looking forward to it. The schedule just all around K-State, everybody's schedule. I'm just looking forward to the new blood getting into the conference and just getting started, just for the simple fact of I'm just tired of the OU Texas talking, and the entire conference was built for them, or it's them. Well, we'll see. And that's all I say is just we'll see. I go, no, people that didn't pay attention enough in the conference, and they thought that the other teams just couldn't compete with those two.
Yeah.
It's just outsiders looking in. That's all that was. Anybody that paid attention to the Big 12 conference, they knew. That's why Texas fans couldn't stand K-State fans for so long. Fitz, it's because we gave them the blues for so long, and they constantly badmouth us. Well, they weren't doing that for no reason. Because why do you badmouth somebody that's not your competition? Well, clearly we were their competition. So, all right. Well, we're going to wrap this one up today, man. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Remember, go to YouTube, subscribe to GoPowerCat.com. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. It helps us out tremendously. We appreciate your all support. We will be back tomorrow for the Big 12 Insiders. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a good one.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.